When a course gets remade, there are many changes that are made in order to adapt the track into a more modern light. Some of these changes can include adding glider ramps, providing a massive visual overhaul, or adding elevation to potentially include anti-gravity. Some tracks don't get handled the best, as Koopa Cape and Coconut Mall were definitely downgraded when they were remade. But some courses actually got changes that improve on the original. A great example is Tick-Tock Clock, as the original felt like a barren room in the middle of nowhere. But the remake not only made the place a lot more lively, but it also added a lot of ramps and a glider in order to fit the more modern standard for tracks. As I said earlier, Mario Kart Wii tracks are infamous for being downgraded, but that isn't the case for all the tracks, as some did get better. Some courses include Moo Moo Meadows, Grumble Volcano, and the topic of this video, Mushroom Gorge. Mushroom Gorge is a pretty iconic track as it introduced a concept that would be in many other tracks, and is a very fun track all around. In this video, I will go over the history of Mushroom Gorge, going over the layout, changes made to the course, and why it got better as the series has gone on. Mushroom Gorge debuted in the series with Mario Kart Wii and was the third track in the game's Mushroom Cup. The track seems to take place in a grassy area high up in the mountains, featuring many mushrooms. This was a track that introduced the concept of bouncing to the series, and the concept is pretty simple. If you land on a surface that has a pulsing effect, it will cause you to bounce, just like a trampoline. Despite the simplicity, this is a cool concept that makes this track a lot of fun. With that said, let's go over the layout. The course starts off with a left turn with some item boxes leading into a right turn with a bridge that takes you to the first bouncy mushroom on the track. This mushroom is placed right after a ramp, and bouncing on it will take you to another part of the mountain. This jump is really easy to make, but since this is the introduction to the concept, I think that the difficulty is perfectly fine. Plus, the mushrooms get a lot more complex as we go through the course. After the mushroom, there is a left turn that takes you to a split path. The left just has some boost pads on idle boxes, while the right path has you bouncing on multiple red mushrooms. This is also where we get the introduction of the green mushrooms, which are the same as red mushrooms, except they don't bounce you. This split path is very interesting, as the right path is definitely faster, but is a lot more risky and difficult than the left path. Once the paths recombine, you enter a cave and do a left turn in order to get to the main part of the track. The cave is decked out by crystals and has lots of mushrooms over a bottomless pit. This is easily the hardest part of the track, as bouncing incorrectly can easily send you into the pit and lose you a lot of time. There are two paths. The one on the left has you going on an upper section with a lot of red mushrooms, while the right path has you going on a lower section with some green mushrooms present. Once you successfully make it to the other side, there is a left turn with some Goombas and some grass you can cut with a mushroom. After that, the track finally loops around. There are a few more things present that enhance this course even more, with the first being a mushroom path on the left at the start. You can only take this path on laps 2 and 3, but it does save a good amount of time. The second thing that will be mentioned is the gap jump. If you are skilled enough, you can use a mushroom to precisely jump the gap and save a huge chunk of time. This cut is likely not intended, as it is insanely difficult, but it is nice to see here regardless. Overall, this track is very solid. Even though it isn't as good as some of the other Nitro courses in Mario Kart Wii, it is still a very good course, especially as a Mushroom Cup track. Now let's see how this track was handled in the next game. Mushroom Gorge got its first remake in Mario Kart 7 and is the third track in the game's Shell Cup. The first change to the track has to do with the mushrooms, and they are a noticeable downgrade from the previous version. Not only do they look very flat, lacking a small bump in the center, they don't make you jump as high as on the Wii version. While this change does kind of blow, it isn't that big of a deal as you might think, as the effect is still pretty fun. This change to the bounciness might have been the reason that the mushroom shortcut at the beginning of the track was removed. Since you had to jump pretty high in order to clear the shortcut successfully, the shorter jumps in this game's mushrooms would have potentially made it impossible to clear the jump. The second main change is the cave, as so many mushrooms were removed. It also looks like the mushrooms were made way bigger, and this is actually a negative change as it gives you less mushrooms to get tricks off of. But this does not matter as much as you might think, like earlier. The last change is a pretty cool one though, as half of the mushrooms are removed, but there is now a glider ramp present. This is a nice change that gives more of a reason to take both paths, as they are now much more different. Another cool detail is that the mushroom that activates your glider is blue, which is neat since the color blue is the color of glider ramps. Overall, this track didn't have the smoothest transition as a lot of things were downgraded, but the added glider ramp and the changes not being very massive definitely keep this track on the same level as the original iteration. So, for the past 2 Wii courses that I have covered, the 8th version was easily the worst by far, so let's see if it was the case here as well. Like the other tracks I have covered so far, Mushroom Gorge came to Mario Kart 8 Deluxe through the Booster Course Pass and was the third track of the game's Propeller Cup. The track does look kind of basic as many Booster Course Pass tracks do, but the gameplay is what is important here, and I am glad to say that it is still very good. I'm going to start off by talking about some of the returning features to this version, as some things removed in the 7th version of this track are actually back in this version. The first being the beginning shortcut. Since the bouncing in this game is just as strong as in Wii's version, the shortcut was brought back, and it is just as fun as it was back on the Wii. The second change is that the path on the left is completely back, and that path now has a split path on its own, as you can go to the right halfway through and take a blue mushroom. This is the best of both worlds as all the paths from both versions are present. However, there is one change that makes this version the worst version of the track, and that is the removal of the third mushroom on the split path before the cave. Seriously though, this change does not really matter as you can just trick off to the edge of the green mushrooms now. This is an amazing change as it was kind of awkward to just go off of the mushroom before, but now the green mushrooms are just as satisfying as the red mushrooms. Overall, this version is great. Not only does it have everything that the original version had, but it also has everything from the 7 version, as well as adding even more things to this track. Now is the part that I rank every version of this track from worst to best. So here's my ranking of every version of Mushroom Gorge from worst to best. In last place we have 7's version. The removal of the shortcut and the bounciness becoming weaker makes this the worst version. In second place we have Wii's version. This track does have everything missing in the 7 version, but is missing the blue mushroom, unlike number 1, 8's version. This version simply merges everything from both versions, so that obviously makes this the best version of the track. Mushroom Gorge isn't as crazy as some of the other games in the series, but it definitely was very consistent, as everything that made the track good is present on every version of this track. One fun fact about this track is that it has always been the third track of its cup, while Coconut Mall and Koopa Cape have had their positions switched around in every game. You can see this as Mushroom Gorge as staying the same while these other tracks kept shifting in quality. I hope you enjoyed the video. It was actually fun to talk about a track that stayed consistently good over a track that got worse over time. I will definitely do another track that got better very soon, and know exactly which one that will be. So please like and subscribe if you want to see that. Thank you guys all for watching, and I'll see you guys on the racetrack. Goodbye.